Welcome to 24/7 Unfiltered with my guy Smoke Dixon. I am Carl Reed. Make sure you like, share, subscribe to the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel. Smoke, let's get right into it on the conversation of super leagues.
Let's do it, my man. Can't wait for this one. This is a
And
good one. This is
it's
epic.
been all the talk this week, as people have been talking about super leagues. College football super league proposal, two-tier league structure would feature all 134 schools playing in the NCAA's D1 FBS. Player union would negotiate with league on NIL rights, transfer portal, and salary structure. College presidents, one senior NFL exec, and co-owner of the Philadelphia 76ers are all behind the proposal. Smoke, when I think of super leagues and when I think about competing at the highest level, I personally feel like there's only about 10 schools in the country that are really in the business of competing for national championships. So from a super league standpoint, does everybody even really belong in this deal?
Nah, coach, you know that. This is a have and a have-nots. At the end of the day, you got to look at it as saying this is the model for the NFL having a farm league. That's the only league that does not have a farm league. Major League got one. Basketball got the G League Elite Conference. Like, football needs to get one. And we've seen it already happening. You've seen these super leagues getting to the Big Ten, SEC, and they're getting the best of the best. And the cream's coming to the top. And you can avoid all the naysayers of not wanting to properly pay guys what they're worth. You can get the old school coaches out of it and really get into the farm system of having real good talent, competitive games, get to where we can see solid football on Saturdays, and everybody else that wants to get into the conference of going to school, not paying players, they can go into that conference too. But I think this cleans it up for everything, Carl.
It does. Just a lot of teams that don't belong when you start talking about playing at the most elite level. It's really even within conference, the Power Four conferences, it's the haves and the have not. So I understand this is a topic that we like. We chose to like it instead of swipe it. For more conversation on super leagues, please look at our 24/7 Sports YouTube channel. Subscribe, like, and share.
We're selling something a little bit differently, and that is we want to recruit, we want to engage, build relationships, we want to develop, retain, and have success. We're not in the market of buying players, and unfortunately, right now, that's what some guys are looking for.
Smoke, I'm gonna start with you on this. What do you think about Coach Kelly's comments?
Coach Kelly. I get it that you don't want to buy players, but I think that's just a poor choice of word. But there's layers to this. I'm gonna address it just layer by layer. The first one, just being a former athlete, a coach, and being a black man in the United States. I don't think you should ever use the word buying or purchasing another human being. We all got to look at this and understand that it's not the dictatorship of college football, the player to coach. That concept is gone. When I sat down with Coach Loxley, when I got the general manager job at Maryland, we both looked at it and said, with this NIL coming down and players getting properly compensated for their play, we got to go to the understanding that this is a partnership. We have to treat the young people as equal partners. They're going to play the game. We're going to coach it, evaluate, and do whatever we have to do. But we can't get to the point that we think that we own the human being. We don't. We're only borrowing them for a period of time for their play. And once they're done with that, move on. Second, Carl, let me get to this. When Brian Kelly got hired at LSU, some of the rumblings from the guys that understood recruiting, like yourself, knew that Grand Valley, Central Michigan, Cincinnati, Notre Dame, you're not in the murky water of getting your hand dirty and muddy SEC big time recruiting. Everywhere that you've been, people just gravitated to you. Now you got to go get them. So stop saying that you're not paying players because you're not getting the right ones. We know that in order to get the top 2025 quarterback, you're not just sitting down saying LSU football is great and come on down there. We knew that there was some business that was handled. So let's remove that part of it. The third part that I want to get to is when you don't get what you want, it's okay to address it and say, you know what, we got to go back to the drawing table and try to figure out how this entire NIL deal is going to work out for us here at LSU. Don't get salty when you lose out on a top prospect because you can't afford them or they chose not to come to your school. Sometimes you just got to say, you know what, Carl? The better man has won. Now back to you, Carl. I've had enough.
I'm gonna be honest with you, Smoke. This is really, really nasty work to me from Coach Kelly on this comment, and I'm gonna tell you why. LSU paid Coach Kelly $100 million. They bought him from Notre Dame. Coach Kelly went out this year. He bought Bo Davis from Texas. He went and got the defensive coordinator and the edge coach from the University of Missouri. And I can tell you what, LSU has national championship expectations. And so now, if I'm the completely new defensive staff this year at LSU, which they have spent $9.27 million on salary alone this year for the assistant coaches that they've hired to lead the defense, and now you get those guys in there and you say, we're not going to pay guys. That's where the moral fiber stops, to where we're not going to pay to get the guys in here that we need. Let me tell you this. LSU expects to win national championships, and that's the only reason that staff is there. Nick Saban, he got it done. He delivered a championship. Les Miles delivered a championship. Ed Orgeron delivered a championship. And I'm going to tell you what, if you mess around and say, well, we're not going to pay players, we're not going to get in the game like everybody else, you mess around and win 8 games at LSU, that seat going to be hotter than the devil's conscience, Smoke.
Carl, understand this, though. I don't think that he even cares about the seat getting hot. When you got that money in your pocket already and you sitting so high and you start looking down at everybody because you're not making the 70, 80, 90 to 100,000 anymore. When you're in the M's game, you're entitled to these comments that makes no sense other than you just wanting to speak freely. And a wise man always told me, just let them talk. The more they talk, exactly what they're going to say is exactly who they are. And we found out who he is. He's a guy that don't want to get his hands dirty. He wants everything to come to him. And at the end of the day, if he don't get one of them rings and things, Carl, you know what's going to happen. He's going to get marched right up out of there, and he's going to go back up north to go where the Ivy League school guys are, and the competitive recruiting, not that much.
Smoke, when I was a kid and my father would drop me off at my grandmother's house on Cutler Street in Detroit, my grandmother would hand me a $10 bill and tell me and my cousin Thomas to go to the corner store, and it'd be a list of about 50 things, and I say, Grandma, this not enough money. And you know what she said to me, Smoke? She said, make it enough. You better make it enough to get those big-time players that you need on the defensive line and for their defense, because the people in the Bayou, they expect for you to deliver a national championship to the LSU Tigers. They will not accept anything less than that.
Agreed.
For more information on the LSU Tigers and Tiger football, please go to go247.com for the latest on Tigers football and recruiting. We got a legend coming on next, Courtney Morgan, former offensive lineman at the University of Michigan, served as GM at Washington, Michigan, and Fresno State, and the director of player development at UCLA in 2013 and 2014. We want to welcome Courtney Morgan to the show. Courtney, I think you got your thing on mute, Courtney.
Thank you, gentlemen, for having me. A pleasure.
Hey, listen, Court. So I was at the convention, the AFCA convention in Nashville. We were at the bar watching the national championship game and Michigan versus Washington, and you had a hand in building both of those rosters. The TV announcer said your name is often, as he said, Coach Harbaugh and Coach DeBoer's name. Then a few days later, Kalen DeBoer goes to the University of Alabama. The announcement goes out, and my texts are ringing, Smoke, because everybody's like, Courtney's on the jet with DeBoer. When Kalen DeBoer got to Tuscaloosa, Courtney is on the jet. Court, can you kind of tell everybody, for the people that don't understand, as the general manager, what is your job and what is the function? Because we keep hearing about this position, and it's become really important here in college football lately. What does the general manager do?
I think the 50-foot view answer is just to bring together elite individuals in the building that can help lead the direction of what we're trying to do to win a national championship. It changes everywhere I go. There's more resources here in Alabama, so I was able to bring more people in. Uh, there are more talented individuals because we have more resources, more bigger budget. So I was able to go get, Aaron Hodges from TCU, who was at Ohio State. I was able to get Jatavis Sanders over at NC State, and Tony Jones, I was at Michigan with, and bring Jared McElwain. We have Bob Weldon, who was already here. So I was able to, come in and build a team. So first and foremost, build the infrastructure of the department and have visions for how I see the day-to-day recruiting department being ran. And then secondly, it's roster management, right? Understanding now you have to do a lot of projecting. So always projecting the future of the roster while constantly, consistently evaluating the current roster, right? I oversee the evaluation and the recruiting process, two different things. You got to evaluate, then you got to, like you said, Smother, you got to go get them, right? And that's a whole different animal in itself. So putting the strategy behind the recruiting part of it, and then also the infrastructure and the filter system on how they evaluate and how we're going to do it. And every place I've been has been different. Smoke, you have to be able to adapt to the staff you have on how you set up your system. Every staff is different, but I think one of the hardest roles, someone in my position, it's not hard, but you have to be able to adjust and work with the staff that you have. Like I said, every staff is different. Go ahead, Smoke.
So basically, what you did in a nutshell, and you're trying to be humble about it, you just created a personnel department due to the fact that you can afford it when you're at Alabama.
Correct.
And a lot of people don't understand you are a chameleon. You have to be the guy that can jump on the phone, like you said, chop it up to an elite talent, get the talent in there. And the next sentence, doing what you're doing right now, buzzing through film, getting that hot list together to find out who are the players that I'm going to sit down and watch it with the head coach and try to figure out that there. And also understanding who are the kids that we're going to bring in this weekend. How are the family structured? What are we going to do when they get here? What do they like? What do they dislike? And how can I do that in order to wrap this up to make everybody know that the bow's going to be put on this top target and we're going to get them? Because you're one of the guys that out there that you don't fish. You pull them big fishes in, my man.
Yeah, I just really, to me, at the end of the day, we're in the people business, right? I mean, it's the people business. Whether you're dealing with people in your office, managing those relationships, and then managing the relationships with the recruits and the parents, and then managing people who work in administration in your own building who, assist you to help you get what you need to be done. So you're always managing relationships. I brought in some really talented people because I've learned, early in my career, you try to do it all yourself. You'll burn out. You can't do it yourself. One of the best things Coach DeBoer has taught me since I've been with him is how to delegate. I had a problem with just doing everything, but when you come from the group of five level, you had to do everything, so you had to do transcripts, you had to do itineraries, you had to do evaluations, you had to do everything, right? So now I brought in people, we strategically hired people to help us in certain areas. We knew coming into the SEC, there was going to be a lot of people saying that, Coach DeBoer has never been in the South. Well, we went and got Jatavis from NC State, was a long-time Georgia high school coach, played at NC State, and he has Georgia pretty locked down with relationships. Aaron was down and had been at Ohio State working under Urban Meyer. He's been at Purdue and he's been at TCU during their run, so he's tied in and he has a motor. So just bringing in people so they can also help with the heavy lifting, and the more people you have in your department that can get on the phone and recruit, not just push paper and do spreadsheets that's part of it. People who get on the phone and move the needle and get people on campus.
You know, Court, you said something about the difference between recruiting and evaluating. A lot of high school guys and a lot of high school parents always ask, when you're doing that front office build out, and Smoke and I talk about this a lot, can you kind of explain to them the difference of the director of recruiting and the director of player personnel?
So the director of recruiting is the person who understands the strategy, builds out, keeps the coaches in line with communication, keeps the coaches on the call sheets, the text plan, making sure that we're getting all the information into our system that we use, whether it's ARMS, War Room, whatever you use. The director of recruiting is the one who is coming up with different campaigns, working with the social media department, working with different ways we can roll out, whether it's graphics or whatever. But the director of recruiting is hands-on in the recruiting process. The player personnel person is really dedicated to the roster. They're dedicated to understanding our roster, understanding the movement, the natural attrition that's going to happen at the end of the year, forecasting on what the needs are in the portal. Like you might have a gap, might have a tight end room where you have a lot of freshmen and some upperclassmen. So you need people to fill that middle slot with some sophomores or juniors. So you're always evaluating the roster, the director of player personnel, also making sure that you're keeping a tight eye on the 85, and just understanding, being ahead of the curve, understanding what the needs of the roster would be.
When we go through the last recruiting cycle in the transfer portal, the biggest recruit and the biggest news was Caden Proctor leaving Alabama after Coach Saban retired and going to the University of Iowa. Then when this period came back up, the biggest story was Caden Proctor leaving Iowa and coming back to the University of Alabama. How big of that was that for you guys to get Caden back? And what do you think that you guys were able to accomplish in the recruiting process to lead to him coming back to Alabama?
Man, that was some of the biggest news we've heard since we've been here. I mean, that was uh, monumental in helping us take steps towards getting to the championship this year. I think, it really came down to Caden Proctor. I think you have to give kudos and credit to the players on the team, the relationships that he had when he left. He missed his teammates, he missed his boys, missed his brothers. They went on spring break together. He realized when he left. I think, you have to understand these are kids who made an emotional decision, and I can't fault these kids. When you come to play for Nick Saban and he abruptly retires, your world is shook up. So he left and went back home. But, Alabama's a special place. With or without Coach Saban, it's still the brand. It's still Alabama. It's still a championship program. And it takes you some time to leave and realize the grass is not greener. And I miss my boys. And he came back. And that's really what happened.
Man, I love you saying that, man, because what a lot of people don't understand, and being a proud Alabama alum, is that when you get into that place, you got to make it in your own. Because if you live up to and try to be the person that was there before, you'll fail at it. But you touch on some things in terms of roster construction. Now you worked in the Big Ten, Pac-12. Now you're down to the SEC. What's your overall concept of building an SEC roster? Is it any different than what you did at Michigan or Washington?
No, I think you got to stay true to your philosophy no matter what, because it's been proven that it works. But I think, number one thing, I don't care what anybody says, high school recruiting is number one. I don't believe in, and Coach DeBoer doesn't believe in building a team through the transfer portal. There's too much talent in this region. You can go 5 hours in any direction from the school, and it's a lot of talent. So capitalize on the high school recruiting, fill your holes in the portal. But the biggest thing about the portal is you have to realize that you got to take proven players. Our belief and what made us successful at Washington is we took guys who were proven on the Power 5 level, or guys who are All-American and All-Conference on the Group of 5 level, but we tried to stick to guys who are proven on the Power 5 level, had great production. You can cut the tape on. They have a book of work over 1 or 2 years. And also, character is important. Character is key. I mean, we got examples back at Washington. Cam Bryant, Wayne Tyler Papa, Michael Penix. Those dudes came in were captains within year one and joined the team midway through the year. So we hit with character. Raylan Goldford, who came from USC, high character kid, 2-3 year starter at USC. So I think you take proven players who've done it on this level, and at worst you're gonna get a solid football player. You're not really trying to get home runs out the portal. You want solid guys.
At the end of the Washington championship game run, obviously Coach DeBoer comes to Alabama. And not a lot of people in the South know a lot about Kalen DeBoer. I was a high school coach in the Midwest, so I've been very familiar with him and had a chance to have him recruit my kids when he was in Iowa as an NAIA coach and when he was an FCS coach at SIU Carbondale. He's won at every stop, at every level. And a lot of people don't realize when you left Michigan to go to Washington, you're an alum of Michigan. You started on the offensive line at Michigan. What made you go with Coach DeBoer? And also, what makes him the right guy for the University of Alabama to follow Coach Saban?
Well, I think you got to meet Coach DeBoer to know. You know him, Carl. I mean, he's an incredible person. He's fun to work with because he's a grinder and I'm a grinder, but I love coming to work every day. I can't say since I've been with him there's a day that I don't love going to work. And he trusts you to do your job, and he gives me a lot of freedom to do it how I see it. And that's big time. He let me bring in who I need. He lets me run with my ideas. And he's just a genuine person, and he's down to earth. So, and he's humble. There's nothing he won't do. He'll do something 10 times before he asks you to do it once. And you root for people like that. You want to work with people like that.
Man, Court, you know what? I was just going through your bio and just looking through it. There were several chances that we either could have played together or worked together. Michigan was in my last three schools going there. I had my host at that time was Cato Jr. You remember Cato?
That was
You probably known Cato when Cato was a DB. When he was slim Cato. Now he got the big. If you can explain a little bit what it felt like leaving your alma mater to go out west. What scrutiny did you go through? What did anybody give you crazy texts? And anybody give you that crazy eye and say, why would you leave the powerhouse to go out west to a program that's not Michigan?
So shout out to Cato. Cato was my host too. So Cato and Walter Cross. But I got all kind of crazy messages, and it was hard. That was a really emotional time. But my gut told me to go with Coach DeBoer. It was probably one of the best decisions I made in my life. It changed my life, but my gut told me to go. And then I'm from the West Coast, so growing up in LA, Washington was a factor in college football. I remember watching Washington back when, Napoleon Kaufman was one of my favorite running backs. How he used to spat his shoes and had a towel, and I used to watch a lot of Washington football. And then I had a teammate from high school, Larry Triplett, who played at Washington, was 2 years older than me. And I also was recruited heavily by Washington. And I was going to go to Washington on a visit, and then Coach Lambright was fired. So I had a lot of familiarity with the program. I knew what Washington had been and what it could be. And I knew Coach DeBoer is a winner. He wins everywhere he goes. And I know Michigan is Michigan, right? I feel like if you have success in Michigan, people are going to say, oh, yeah, it's Michigan. But I knew if we went to Washington and had success at Washington, you can't take nothing from us. And I just really bet on myself.
Man, you said a mouthful right there, man. And I'm with you. Walt also was my host, because they both was in the same dorm.
Yeah.
But man, it's crazy now that I finally get to sit down and talk to you. The only time that we did chop it up was over the phone and just sharing different ideas when he was up there at Michigan. Shout out to you again, what you did in terms of preparing Michigan to win up front. And you know, as an offensive lineman, calls an offensive lineman myself, I'm the DB stuck in the middle. How important is it to get it right up front?
Man, to me, maybe because I am an ex-lineman, and I know you got to build the wall up front, both offensively and defensively. And, especially in this league, you win by dominating the defensive line. I remember in Michigan, 2001, we played Tennessee in the Citrus Bowl. I remember lining up and seeing Albert Hainsworth and John Henderson on the same line. I mean, the SEC is different, so I knew even in Michigan, we were able to get Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant in the same class. Both of those dudes would be top 20 draft picks next year. So you got to get those big dudes up front, and you got to stay big. You can't sacrifice and get sawed off dudes. You got to stay big, long, and athletic. And you got to project. Sometimes those guys up front are not easy evaluations. You gotta watch for those traits, and then follow those traits.
So, guys, I want Smoke and Courtney. I want you both to answer this question, right? I was a former high school coach. Smoke, you've also been a GM at the college level, Big Ten school in Maryland. You've worked in the front office in the National Football League. There are high school coaches that get upset when you don't offer their kids. And they also feel like transfer portal guys are moving the high school guys out of the forefront of recruiting. What advice would you have to give Smoke and Court? I'll start with you, Smoke, and then Court, I want you to answer. What would you tell a high school coach that's trying to help his kids get to the next level and how to handle the evaluations that you're placing on their players?
Well, the first thing I would tell the high school coaches, don't believe the hype, because you just have two general managers here sitting here telling you that. We would rather go high school in terms of recruiting and supplement our roster with some good portal guys, that's good players that have film. But just trust the process. Like Courtney just said, traits. Big, stay big even when you get tired. Long, stay long when you get tired. Fast, stay fast when you get tired. So you have those prospects that have those athletic traits. Keep working with them. Don't get frustrated by the naysayers saying that your guys won't get recruited because I'm taking all portal guys. The proper schools and the schools that's going to win moving forward and the schools that's going to dominate are going to take high school players, develop them, play them. And if there's a gap in there that Courtney just talked about, we'll get those guys from a good school, group of 5 school, or a P5 school that's played, and they can come in and fill that gap. But when you want to build a team and you want to build your roster out right, you're going to go to high school. Don't listen to the naysayers telling you that they were not recruiting high school. High school recruiting is still prominent in college football.
Yeah, I agree. I would tell kids, don't worry about the roster. I always tell kids and parents, okay, you got 30 offers. How many of the schools are recruiting you? An offer is an offer. Getting recruited is another thing. So you just find a school that fits you best, stay working hard, and fall in love with the process of not getting recruited, fall in love with the process of getting better as a football player, put the time in, and things will work out for you. Everybody can't play at Alabama, everybody can't play at Georgia, Michigan, whatever, but there's a school for you. And if you work hard and grind and become a good teammate, I mean, things work out. The NFL draft is a true example of they'll find you. Look at the number one corner in the draft from Toledo, and from Florida. So all I'm saying is you just got to trust the process. Don't fall in love with recruiting, and you'll be okay. And then also don't be afraid to go to camp still. Coaches love live evaluations. Go to camps. Don't hide from camps. And also, one more thing, run track. Man, run track.
Multiple sport athlete calls still win, man. And at the end of the day, you show up, you show out, and you show the coaches that you're willing to compete still, even if you're being recruited by 30 other schools, come out there and just compete, lace your cleats up and strap up and get ready to go. It says so much about who you are. And like you said earlier, Courtney, character. That's just telling me that regardless of what situation that you get put into, you're going to do your best job of winning.
Court, we're going to ask you one last question. We want you to answer this in 90 seconds or less. In the last decade, the game has changed with transfer portal, NIL, and obviously the way that front offices are structured in college football. Do you see a space where the general manager becomes as important or more important in the next 4 to 5 years as coordinators and head coaches, and we can see an uptick in college GMs making a similar salary to NFL GMs?
I don't think you'll ever supersede the head coach. Um, I think I could see the GM moving in that direction being as important as the coordinator because, you know, the coordinators eventually want to be head coaches, so they come and go. You know, they have aspirations. If you're GM, for most of the time, it's going to be someone who's going to be there for the long haul. So you want to place some importance on people who are going to be there in the long haul. But I think that, yeah, the position will continue to grow if you can do multiple things. I think, you know, in college, you have to be able to do multiple things. You have to have a multi skill set. And the guys that have it will flourish.
Guys, we want to thank you, Courtney, for coming out. For more information on the University of Alabama, please visit Bama247.com. For the latest on Crimson Tide football and recruiting, for Smoke Dixon, I am Carl Reed. You have just watched Unfiltered.